Hey guys, hey all my artist friends. I just cleaned the lens of this and now it's doing something weird. What is that? That's so weird. I cleaned my lens on this camera and I did it with a sponge. Anyways, hey, welcome everybody. David here with BeckerArt, and today we're going to be doing a mountain scene. Pretty much a Bob Ross kind of painting, and so that's cool. And yeah, look at that white up in this, up in that corner. Look at that. That's I think I just cleaned my lens on there, and I hope I didn't scratch it. Anyways, but so we're gonna be doing a scene of a mountain with misty kind of clouds in there, and so we're gonna have some fun. And today's beer again comes from Dubuque. I got it when I was there. There I went to Seven Hills. Look at Seven Hills. Seven Hills Brewery, and so this is a remedy wheat ale brewed with cherries. So we'll see how that's like. So let me just get my glass here and see what we're doing. Hey, Maria and Barbara, thanks for stopping by. So it's gonna be red probably because it's cherry. This is a pretty big glass, so I can't do a bad pour. So remedy wheat ale brewed with cherries. So, remedy. I'm not sure what that means. Wheat ale with cherries. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. I'm going to give that not a great taste. I'm going to give it an 8.5. 8.5, guys. It's got a little bit of a cherry taste, but kind of a little bit of bitter cherry taste. So the ones I've had so far from that Geller or from the brewery has been a little bit IPA kind of like, but not bad. 8.5, 8.5 paintbrushes. And so let's keep on going here. And so I'm gonna have to. I'm working on changing my website, and so I realized, and Gene Peterson and myself were talking. I took Gene Peterson was in our area doing a workshop, and I drove her to the airport, and we were talking both about our websites and stuff and how old they are. And I do have to. I'm going to be putting more recent pictures and paintings I've been doing because all these photographs up here, all these paintings are very old. And so I'll be changing those around pretty soon. But here's where you get my stuff at BeckerArt.net or DavidRBecker.com. So find everything there, and anybody new, please go to my website and sign up for my newsletter. That way you always get, every Tuesday, you'll get what we're going to be painting, this right here. You'll be getting, that's the picture. You can come here to my website too. Everything's on my website. It's just that my new kind of stuff is not here yet. And you go down here and you can sign up for my newsletter. All right, so let's keep on going to our supplies. Supplies are my watercolor paints, always, of course. And masking fluid, no, I'm not using masking fluid. I'm not using transfer paper on this one. It's pretty simple. And so just brushes and my Legion paper. I'm definitely using Legion paper today. I'm not using a board. And so everything's good. And then with my value study, let's go right to the value study. And well, this is when I do my value studies, I talk about how I do more a black and white, no tan of the image. And so this I took, and basically it's a pretty simple composition, really. I mean, you've got the mountains in the back, on the bottom, and the tree, and the light on top. So as long as you follow that, you're going to be fine. You know, like I always say, follow the values first, and then later on you can get in there with the you can go in with the color and all that other stuff. But in your value study here, and our center of interest is pretty much the mountains right in this area right here. So basically, you know, I guess the mountains right over here are kind of our center of interest. And this is like the foreground tree, and I like how it's against the lighting right there. And so this mountain right here, and this maybe is a secondary interest, and we're kind of debating that today. And so I did this one in class today, and it turned out okay. Where is it? It's right over there. Hold on 1 second. I gotta go over there and get it. But I didn't quite like the colors, and I'll show you that in a second. And so let me just take you to the tabletop here. And so here's what we did this afternoon. And you know, I love purple, and so I went with kind of lavendery, and everybody else, all the students, went with a more of a blue you know, earth tone blue, and this didn't even get dark enough because remember I said follow the value pattern, and this is a little bit darker, and it could have been blue but darker, and so I didn't quite get it dark enough. So this actually is almost like the values of the sky, and so that was my light. So I didn't follow my value pattern this afternoon. So we're gonna follow it this evening, I mean. And okay, boy, this. I got a new camera. I just have not been able to put it up there yet, and so for the front-facing camera, I got a new one, and so but I haven't had a chance to hook it up. Anyways, so here it's just the paper. I didn't mount this yet on a board or anything. I'm working a lot on board lately, but this one's not on that. And so, hey, Pamela, Monica, Wendy, Sue, and Abby. An unusual selection for you. I am super curious what you will do with it. It's kind of like, it's a Bob Ross, basically, is what it is. It's very much like a Bob Ross kind of painting. And actually, there is a Bob Ross, and I'm gonna, on the 29th of this month, I think it's a Tuesday, there's a museum here in, not too far from where I teach in Libertyville, where at 11 o'clock we're going to meet everybody at the Dunn Museum. It's called Dunn Museum. It's in Libertyville where I teach, and I just found out about it today. And right now they have a show or an exhibition of Bob Ross's work, and just like a little story of all this stuff. And so I've never watched this movie, but I'm going to probably go there, and we're going to go there together with a group. And we're going to go there. So if you're in the area on October 29th, I think it's a Tuesday, we're going to go over there at 11 p.m., not 11 p.m., 11 a.m., and we're going to be going over there on a Tuesday just to see it, and it'd be kind of fun. Anyways, let's get back to our thing. So what I did this afternoon, like I said, this is a little bit too light. I think I would like to tone down just slightly. I could still do that in this painting. This was done on a board. This is done on a panel. And so that's okay, but I'm going to do it on the paper this time, and I'm going to use more of the blue tones, even in the sky. You know how much I love purple, and so I just went with purple, and I didn't quite get it dark enough to show the steam or the fog, you know, that's in there. So let's see if I can do that this time. And let me go over here because my chat's going away. All right, so I'm going to start out with my large brush, and I'm going to do the sky right away, wet into wet, because that's my light area, remember, always in the BeckerArt 3-step. And for anybody who's new here, I always do the BeckerArt 3-step, which is the first step is the lights and the color. And so I am going to add a little bit more color than you see there in the photo right there. That's a little kind of dark and stuff, but I'm going to I kind of put the tops of the mountain in, and you don't really see that. I changed the mountain tops a little bit, not a real lot, but just somewhat. I made it so you can see the point. And I do want the light to be right in here by my center of interest. This area is kind of like my center of interest area. We're going to try to do that. And so we're just going to wet the surface. And again, if you have questions, please ask away. I'm going to keep this side of the mountain kind of dry because I don't care about the hard edge. That's okay to get a hard edge. Just going to wet this all. And I just wet it with pure water. If you want to use a little bit of paint so you can tell where you're wetting it with, that's fine too. I'm just going to keep that one part right there a little bit lighter in the white. I am going to use grays, and as you can see, I didn't clean my palette since on Saturday. Actually, I used this for my AWS. I've been working on my AWS paintings. I got them done yesterday, and I submitted them to AWS, and this year I get to submit 2 because I've been in twice, and so I'm just crossing my fingers that I can get my letters this year. And it'll be the 3rd time I get an AWS. And then that way I would go to New York again and just go to the show because that was so much fun last year. So I'm going to go with a little bit more bluish grays, and so I'm just going to, here's a little bit of black, and in my scene that I was doing for AWS, I used a lot of my darks. It's a really dark painting. And so this is a little bit of black with a little bit of lavender and purple. And so let's put a little more blue in it though. Like I said, I want to put a little bit more blue in this scene as I did last time. And all this advertising always takes away my... Where is the chat? There it is. Got to see what you guys are talking about. And so I'm going to go in here and do a little bit more gray, a little bit of blue. I'm so not used to working on just plain paper anymore because I've been putting everything on boards and panels, and I really enjoy that, I must say. Really enjoy working panels, and I don't have to worry so much about things warping or anything like that. I'm just putting my hand here because it's like warping a little bit like this. But that's just really slight. It is 300 pounds, so it's not gonna do very much. So it's like a gray. I'm gonna keep it like white right there. And so let's go in there. And to make it fall down, I should have it on a board, but I don't. But I can just lift it up like this a little bit and have it go down a little bit. See how it's blending downwards a little bit, and I kind of like that. I enjoy that type of look. And let me tell you one thing about watercolor. Now that more and more I'm using watercolor and gouache and on black paper a lot, is that the biggest problem I'm going to say that we all have as watercolors is we never ever use enough paint. We tend to just always make it look like the value that we want, and then we leave it like that, and that's always too light because it always dries 20% lighter. And so it's the hardest thing for me to understand and try to teach also is to make people make it look wrong to get it to look right, because it has to be darker than what you see when it's wet. It has to be 20% darker, so it has to look wrong to make it look right, to get the value that you really want to get in there. And so that's the hard part. That, I must say, is probably one of the hardest things for me to teach, and myself included, to teach myself to do it, because we're so into seeing the picture, how nice it looks when it's there wet, and it looks great, right? Do you find, Maria says, do you find the crescent board dries up quickly while painting? That happens to me a lot, even after wetting the surface quite a bit. Yeah, because it's not soaking in as much, and so it doesn't act like a sponge, where paper that's soft and like this paper is a little bit softer, so it's absorbing into the paper a little bit more and keeping wet longer. Where the panel, it's kind of like hot press in a way that it just sits there and the paint sits on top, and so it definitely does dry faster. Definitely. And so I'm keeping this part light right here, and I'm putting like these darker clouds in. Kind of making more blue this time because last time I used the violets, and so I'm going more with the blue sky. This is more what it is, what the picture is, and so a little bit of light. And if I can make a little bit, if I make this part the only white part, then it looks like it's shining through there. Because it is kind of foggy, and I'm going to put it right into the mountain here, so that you get some of the softness into the mountain right away, and some of the color also into the shadowing and this misting. And as you notice, I've been blending a lot with my pencil. I really find that helps me a lot when I go to paint, is to have the value. Like if I like the trees is dark, and so I just shade it. And by using the pencil, I use these sumo grip pencils, and this is a 0.7, but I use also the white one. It's a white pencil, and that's 0.9. And I love it because I can it's like I'm working with the lead, and I'm kind of shading. And I shade only the parts that I know they're going to be dark. And so when you put the dark paint on there, that's fine because it just goes on nice and dark, and it covers up, and it even helps it to be a little bit grayer. So I actually been doing that a lot in plein air painting. I just use the pencil to shade it so I know where the darks are going to be. Let me hold it up again just slightly to let it run down a little bit. And the more of a line I want, the more I want the, I'm going to suck some of this out here a little bit, because the thicker the paint is, while this is really wet, the more it is easier to control like an edge. Control a thicker edge. Put a little gray in here. I'm really loving this gray on gray. This is a white gray. This one right here, and it's gray on gray, and I really like to use it. It is kind of opaque, but again, if I'm using it while it's wet, it's floating. It's still kind of transparent, but it gives it kind of a dull look to it. And I don't mind that at all. And I mix it with the blue sometimes. And I have my towel here, and so I wipe my brush the back of it, and so then I can just use the pure pigment in the wet wash and kind of manipulate where I want the pigment to go so that I can get somewhat of a harder edge. And so here we go, see? A little bit of a... All right, so I don't like that white right there. It's a little bit too light. I want the white right there, and so I'm just going to go over this a little bit. And it's okay to go over the mountain to the peak right there. That's fine. So there's my sky, and let me put a little bit of this blue down in this area here, because that's going to be like the fuzziness. And I don't want a white. I just want the clouds, the little misty clouds here, the fog that's coming and rolling in here. I just want it to be the same color as the sky, and not white. The only one place I want white is right there. This is going to be lighter than the mountain, and I want to make the mountains a little bit darker this time too. And so now I have to wait a little bit. So let me toast you guys again with the 8.5 beer. Yeah, the Crescent board, I just bought I bought a bunch of packets of 3. And so that, like I said, this is the Crescent board, the Crescent brand board. I'm also using the Legion aluminum, but I kind of don't use that for the paintings like in the classroom, because I'm saving those for like the good stuff, like the good paintings. And I was showing everybody I brought to my classes this week. I brought my studio work compared to what I'm doing here today. The only thing I do differently is I paint slower. I don't go rushing through things. And usually I paint bigger. I usually paint a full sheet, where this is a quarter sheet, right? And so I'm painting 4 of these in one. And so if I would do a sky like this, I would just spend more time because it's going to take longer. So don't ever worry about how long things take you. It's not anything to do with anything that it's going to be good or bad. You just paint at your speed. Don't worry that somebody else is painting a lot faster. I mean, I paint a lot faster, right? And you can't kind of times keep up with this because I have to get it done in 1 hour. But that doesn't mean you have to get every painted in an hour. Matter of fact, you never want to do it in an hour. You just take your time. Take your time and just do what you have to do to learn how to do a wash like this, wet into wet. And I'm just stalling here because I want to get this dry so I can go in there. I'm going to go in with my large middle tones and darks, and that's what's step 2. I already have my lights. Everything else is dark from this. And my lights are all these light blues and grays. And so now I'll go in there with the blue and kind of a little bit of lavender, but mostly blue. I want to go with a little bit bluer and make it a little bit darker than I did this afternoon, because this is way too light. Should have been in my dark area. This is not in my dark area, right? And so I really have to just go over here and just blend this all darker. So it goes to part of my dark scheme, because it's a very simple composition. The top is light, and it comes around here light, and this is all dark. And yes, there are speckles of light and dark together, but that's okay. As long as you get the big areas of light and dark as your pattern, as your value pattern. That's so important to keep your value pattern. All right, cheers, everybody. Not bad. It's only an 8.5 though. All right, so let's get into our mountains here. And so I'm going to go with more of a blue. I'm going to take ultramarine blue, use some ultramarine blue, a little bit of purple, maybe a little bit of Prussian blue too, something a little bit darker. And I'm going to gray it up. And what do you gray up blue with? You can use an orangey red, orangey red, so maybe like a brilliant orange can dull that down a little bit. See how it turns it more gray? And so if you want something to dull it down a little bit, I'm going to use a little purple, blue, and then up here it's a little bit lighter, so I'm going to wipe my brush off here and pick up the little bit lighter color that I started with up here. And so I'm just going to go in here first with the lighter color of the mountain. Now it's still wet, as you see, and so it's going to blend into the back, which I didn't want to happen, but that's okay. We'll just keep on going. See how it blended? When you want something soft edge, all you got to do is wet the surface. I'm going to go right into this area because this is going to be even darker yet. So that's a little bit lighter. And I kind of like how it's a little bit lighter up here. And I'm going to give it, I'm not wetting it all at once. And why I'm not doing that is because I want to have some hard edges there. So I wet it, I call this wetting as you're going along. Now I didn't want that to be wet right there because now I don't have an edge really. It's a soft edge, which you know what? That's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine because right down here it is still dry now, and so I can get hard edges down there. And here I'm gonna get a little bit darker, like in the picture. It gets a little bit darker, and I'm not worrying about this triangle line here of dark trees. I don't care about that right now because I'm just getting this part, and that's gonna go right in there, and I'm gonna have something darker over it, and that's why you work light to dark. For anybody who's new here, most of you I know that already know that. Is that you're, and you can tell I have a new palette, and I took all my old colors out of my old palette and put in this new palette, but it's already dirty. But I just switched colors from the one palette, and now this is all new, and I kept a little bit of room for a couple extra new colors, and so I'm still looking for a really nice palette though, or something that's a little bit better than this one. I'm not sure why I made green right there. I'm not doing that yet. So I'm coming down here. I kind of like this hard edge that comes down here. I probably should have put some color into the snow here too, but I'll do that later. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know, because I'm here for you guys. I'm here to teach you guys, and if you don't ask questions, I'm not sure what you know and what you don't know, or what you want to ask. So ask away. You know, I have no problems with that whatsoever. That's why I'm here, is to answer questions for you guys. And also, if you guys want to help me, sometimes if I'm doing something wrong, please let me know. Or if you're wondering why I'm doing a certain thing a certain way, definitely ask me. And this is my second time I'm doing this one, so it's going to be better than the first one. It always is, because it teaches me something when I do it the first time. And the first time, I didn't do it dark enough, but look at here, how dark I'm getting with this now, this time. And I'm going with more of the bluish green and blues, because that's really what the color would be probably here anyways. So I'm doing it on dry surface here to get this nice and textury. And then leaving some of the hard edges in there. And then this gets a little bit light. And you notice once it is wet, I go in here and see I don't care about this part right here because I'm going to be going up into that. And so I can bring this down even a little bit farther and just bring that into that area. I mean, losing my drawing a little bit because it's a little bit dark. And so I may lose my lines, but this is just trees. So I don't have to worry too much about that. And I know it seems like a simple painting to do, but once in a while, it's nice to do something a little bit more simple and not so complicated with the drawing. And the drawing here doesn't matter as much as, like, if you're doing a portrait, it matters a lot when you're doing portraits. And speaking of portraits, the place where I teach, and this Saturday in Lake Zurich, they're having a show, a portrait show. So if you're around the area on a Saturday from 4 to 7, I think, or 5 to 7, somewhere around there, go look at their website at Main Street Gallery. And but they're having a portrait show. I may go to it just because I want to see the portraits that they have, and they also have like raffling, a bunch of raffle things that you can raffle off, like my courses. Like you can get tuition, and that's in Lake Zurich, Illinois, if you're in the area. If not, well, you can't go. So, but here we go. So I'm putting a little bit of purple in this area, and I'm just working it across. I'm just getting things darker, and I don't have to go totally dark yet with it. I can go back in later too, and maybe get some darker, harder edge things. But right now I'm just trying to get a little bit of the dark in there. It's really dark right down here. I put a little bit of this dirty, a little bit of lavender, not lavender, purple, excuse me, purple. And so what I want to do here now is, I want to wet this area right now. So I'm just going to wet this whole area because I want to create those soft, muted edges that look like clouds, not clouds, but a mist. A mist is rolling through the clouds, right? A little fog, mist. And so I got to take and wet it all and then use thicker pigments here to create. This is the color I want, but now I got to go around it and go with thick pigments. Like actually this has to be really thick because I really made this really, really wet right over here. So I'm going to take a little bit of the water out because it's a little bit too wet. And I can tell by looking at the paper and seeing what I see as how much water is on there. If it's puddling and I see it's above the texture of the paper, I know that's way too wet. So I'll take a little bit of that water out so that it'll blend, but it's not going to blend so far that it's just going to wash out to nothing. I want some edges here, and so again, I want to take the purple blue and take some orange to dull it down a little bit, because otherwise it's too blue and too bright a blue. So I'm dulling it down a little bit. And I gotta make it thick enough so that it only bleeds a certain part into this little mist that I have going here. These backgrounds and the background stuff there, that's more detail. I'll do that when we get to detail stage. Right now I'm trying to get the big areas of light and dark. Actually, the dark and medium is what I'm getting right now. So I'm gonna try to get in there with a lot of pigment, and see I'm just picking up pure pigment here. Oops. That's dry now, so I can get a nice edge on there. Also, if you want texture, there's many different ways of getting texture. I could use, cellophane. I could use all kinds of ways to put a sponge in there. But right now, I just want it smooth, and I can also spatter it. If you're going to spatter, make sure you cover up with, the backing of something else. I can put this over here, and just so I can spatter if I want to spatter. But we'll leave it alone for a second. I'm just still going to try to get this mist right here. The mist of... And see how long you have to take to do that? I mean, you don't have to go do it fast. This reference was from Pixabay that I got this reference from. I just typed in mountains, a mountainscape, and tons of mountains came up, and normally they're not that great ones. They don't have the best ones, right, that you are for free, but good enough. And I just made this on my own, and I'm working a lot with that lately on trying to make the picture your own by changing things enough on the picture, because we tend to not do that very much. But after seeing what a lot of these artists did with plein air painting, and in my last newsletter I showed you what Mark did on his picture that was so different from what the actual scene was, that I started realizing, that's what I want to do. I want to do a little bit more changing of the subject matter to fit my look, the way I paint, the values I use, and because you don't have to make it look exactly like the image, like it's photographic. I mean, we're not photographers, we're painters, and so go ahead and shift it to where it looks like a great painting. If there's certain color schemes that you love to use, then use them. You don't have to follow the color schemes exactly of the picture, unless you want to get close to whatever it is that you like about the picture. Maybe it is the color that you like about the picture, then go ahead and use it. But don't be so, after looking and taking a photo and look at the color and match it to your brush and stuff. That just, to me, is like, you're just being like a copy machine then. You're just copying what you see in the photo and making it go down. And there are times when you want to do that, of course, and so that's fine. You can do that. I tend to try to make up the colors myself and just use colors that I normally like to use that are in my palette. And most importantly, follow your value pattern. I mean, that's what I'm doing right here to get the looks of this mist in the background. So that's supposed to look like a mist, and it doesn't look like Misty red. And so I'm just going to kind of go in there with a little bit darker. Kind of want to make it look misty. And there's a little... And later on, I can go in there with a little bit more texture. If I need more texture, I'll do that later. And this is definitely darker than my last one. Could be a little bit darker here, but like I said, I can also do that with hard edges later. And it all depends on how dark I go with this, too. If I go really, really dark with that, that'll look lighter. So it depends on how dark I go with this area. But like the photograph, I don't think is great when it comes to like this dark. I think I'm going to make that a little bit darker and a little bit more colorful. I will put some warm colors in here, like it's more of a fall scene. I just think that'll help it to bring it forward a little bit. Here, just doing the background. Look at the mist just sliding through here. And it's all wet, and so you take your time. Take your time. You don't have to rush it. Just make sure your brush is always drier, or not as wet as the surface of the paper. because then you're adding paint and you're adding water, and you just want to add pigment. Just make sure that your brush is kind of the same wetness as the paper, or less. All right, so there's my darks, my middle tones. That's my middle tones. Now let's get our darks here. And I don't mind this being soft edged. I can make that soft edged. I'm gonna start up here, and like I said, I'm gonna go with more of a warm color, so it looks like more like fall. And you know, sometimes speaking of references and stuff, sometimes like I want to do mountains, but I don't live in a mountain area. So there's times, you know, when as a student or somebody who's just practicing, you know, those sites online now that you get free references are just have been a miracle for me, because as a teacher I can't get all these images. I don't have that many images, so if I can get them from the internet and they're free to use, it just makes it so much easier for my job to go out and get good subject matter that will help me teach you how to do certain things. All right, so now let's do these darks. And so with these darks, I got to go with really a lot of pigment, super amount of pigment. All right, and so I'm going to go with a really dark green. Oh, there's the train. And then some green, some quinacridone gold. I mix that with the blue. Now we've got a really dark green, and I put orange in with that to dull it down. It's too bright an orange, so it's like I just want it to be a dark green. And since this brush makes it look like a pine tree, because it's pointed like a pine tree, I just rest it down like this. I'm just kind of resting it down. It looks like instantly like a pine tree because they're pointy on the top, right? And so I'm just tapping this brush, and I can also use it and just draw a little bit of this branches and stuff. And on the picture, there's a very straight line down here. I'm gonna break that up. I never like a really straight line, and because that will cause a triangle in this corner. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go up and down and maybe come real far in here a little bit more, and then go way up high here. So then again, that I have a little bit of difference when it comes to the such a straight line like that. And then I'm just going to wet it as I go along here. I'm going to wet it again as I go along. And I'm going to dip into some orange and some yellow even. And then see, I'm just going to go in here, and I can hear the train. And some yellow, because I want to make it, again, some like, maybe there's some aspen trees in here. Like a little bit of yellow and orange. Back to green and blue. It can be brownish. More fall-like colors. It just, to me, makes it look more interesting. And there's a lot of trees here, so it's just basically doing brush strokes like this. And again, you notice I didn't wet it all, because I need these hard edges here, and I don't want them to be straight down. So I'm going to go back and forth and just get different values of the color, different colors. And this part can be hard edged, so that separates the background from the foreground. Put some of these in there. And once it is wet, though, that's when I go back in and try to get this soft edges and make it look like whatever it is I'm painting, and make it look readable, like this, like putting this yellow in there, putting some really darks in there, some purple and blue. So there's some really dark spots of this tree. And you look at the picture, that's what it's like. There's parts that are really dark and some parts that are really light. Now, if it's too dry, you know, then I'm not getting a good release of the paint onto the paper. So I'm just going to go down here, just do it really far down. And I'm not looking at the photograph to see exactly that I have the certain exact trees where there are. It's just basically a beautiful wash of watercolor that hopefully will look nice when I put this lights in there and darks, and I'll give the impression of trees like that. See again how I'm separating this and not making it straight down. I'm shifting it back and forth. Make some parts a little bit, come down a little bit. And there can even be some trees that are not pine trees. They could be other kind of trees in there. I was telling my class I would love to go to Switzerland maybe and do a a workshop there. That'd be kind of fun to do a workshop in Switzerland with all the mountains and again some orangey yellows in here. Wetting as I go along. I know it's wetting like you're actually painting and drawing something hard edged, but it becomes wet with a lot of pigment. You know, you can either wet with just pure water or with water and pigment inside your brush. They both work. It's both the same type of thing. And you can go back in, but once you're wet, then you can go back in and manipulate those washes. Okay, so see, I'm getting dark and light, dark and light, dark and light. Just a little bit of everything. And again, they're supposed to be look like pine trees, and so the brush looks like a pine tree, right? It's like they got the shape of a pine tree. And so I'm just kind of dabbing it like this. And I wet it a little bit beyond where I'm painting, so I'm just going to wet it a little bit farther. And just apply a lot of pigment into that area. You know, like even if you think about like Bob Ross when he did this in oil, how they have a certain way of holding a brush to get a certain kind of look for a pine tree. It's everybody has a different way of doing like pine trees or in different mediums. There's all different ways, you know. So you find a way that you like to make it look like a pine tree. Like how do you do it? Do you do it with a different kind of brush? Do you do it with a flat brush? Do you do it with a fan brush? You know, what do you use to make your tree or your wash look like a certain thing? And Bob Ross did it with that, you know, with that one brush. He'd always like dab it. I think a fan brush. He'd make his pine trees with a fan brush. So you have to figure out how you're going to make things in your painting look a certain way because you practice and you figure out things. Or you follow like what I had taught you maybe. You know, it's all different ways of learning how to do things, but teaching and taking a class like this helps you along a little bit faster because I'm going to give you the quick way of doing it because I've done it before. So that's what's great about being not self-taught, because if you're self-taught, everything you have to learn is on your own. And so having taken classes or being online like this, you know, by watching, you learn and then you try it. And then you just got to do it. Then I mean, it's all up to you. I can talk your ear off, but until you actually do it, then you're not going to learn it until you actually have to go out there and try it and do it. Do it to it. So isn't that nice? Isn't that nice looking hill there? And not so straight down. This one can be a little bit higher. I can make some trees back here now. I'm going to take these trees over here and make them like they're farther away. And so what I'll do is I'll take like a blue, more of a blue-gray, and make them not as dark, and like they're falling back a little bit. So they can still be way back there, but just going to use a different value and also a different color. More blue and not so green, and so they feel like they're farther back here. Less contrasty. They'll push back. Same thing with this one. Now I want it to be a little bit darker and falling forward. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker than what you see in the photo. The photo doesn't, you almost don't see this tree that I'm going to do right now. So I'll take a little red in there. I'm going to make it a little bit of crackling gold. Dark green. So I want it to be really dark. And so this is going to go a little higher. And this brush has a really fine point, and so I can just use that little fine point to flick it to make the little branches. I like to put the trunk a little bit ahead, just so you can see where the trunk of the tree goes. And then I like kind of flick my brush. Flick it. And see how dark this one is compared to this one? This one's bluer, this one's browner. Or greener, dark green with a little bit of violet and a little bit of dark blue, violet, connecting them gold to make it greenish. A little flicking. Again, learn your brushes. What can you do with your brush that nobody else does it that way? You know, practice with your brushes. Try to find a way of using the brushes that nobody's ever taught you, that you're just gonna know that you can make a certain kind of look of a certain kind of thing. It could be a tree, it could be the mountains. What can you use your brushes in a way that says you? You know, there's I'm trying to think of the artist in Green Bay, or works with that Jack Richardson. He does the pine trees, and his name is, oh, I'll think about it. He has a round palette. What's the round palette guy? He does the pine trees. Ah, that's what happens when you get old. All right, I'll remember hopefully before the end. And if you guys remember, if you guys know of a guy that does pine trees, very colorful backgrounds, and he has the round palette with Richardson, Jack Richardson, please let me know in the comments. I'm totally blanking on his name right now. And he does a pine tree, and as soon as he does the pine tree in his way, you know it's his. And so that's what you kind of want to get. You want to get to a point where when you put a mark down, it's like that trees I will always remind me of. That was going to help. Quiller, yes, thank you, Ev. Eve. Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking of. What's his first name? Quiller. Yeah, he does some amazing trees, and the colors that he uses on this mountain will be all really bright reds and oranges and purples, and so it's really cool. I mean, I think it's really, really cool. So I'm gonna wait for doing this pine tree because I'm gonna go back into my mountains back here, and I want to just get those done too. So now I'm gonna go back into my trees, or into the mountains, I mean, and get this all done. I'll go with really light here, and I'll get darker. I'll go with a light color here first, and get this kind of going here. And it's kind of misty up there, so I can wet it to get a soft edge. So I'm just going to wet up here a little bit and get that soft edged. Anytime you want a soft edge, you got to wet it. You just got to wet the surface, and then put when you want a hard edge, you want it dry. Steve Quiller, thanks guys. Yeah, he's his work is great. I love his work. I love his pine trees, because as soon as you see him do a pine tree, Steve Quiller, it just looks like his kind of work. And that's what you want to do. And then there's other artists like Weimer, Dan Weimer, is that his name? Dan Weimer, who does a lot of with acrylics and watercolor. And he just was taught a week after I was teaching at Dillman's, and he has a bunch of stuff in Wisconsin and a lot of galleries up north. He has a lot of stuff. Dan Weimer, I think it's Dan Weimer, but he does a whole different kind of set of ways of making a pine tree. And with his, it's like negative painted, and he uses a lot of masking fluid. So it all depends on how you want to make the things look and make them. The wash. How do you do your washes so that it says you, whoever you are? What is it about your washes that are different from everybody else's washes? And you can learn from these guys and take their classes and watch their videos and everything. But then sooner or later, you got to get your own. You got to get your own style. And so by doing, you know how you get it? You do a lot of painting. You paint a lot until you find something that really works for you, works really well for you. I noticed that when I was at the plein air events, is that when I'm looking at all the paintings, they all seem very close to the same kind of style. You know, oil painters paint a certain way, and then it kind of all looks together. But then you'll have somebody else who does the same thing, but just has a twist to it. Like he'll make the brushstrokes really, have a certain kind of twitch to his brushstroke, and it just states that kind of person or that artist. And then you remember him because of a certain thing that he does with his paintings. And so see how I'm just going soft edges and hard edges, and I'm just going in there explaining the mountain. I'm just kind of going in there and just kind of putting in lights up here because I want this to be really far away. And I can erase the pencil lines, but sometimes I kind of like the pencil lines there. That way I'm done. This one's a little bit harsh right here, this pencil line. But since I have this soft edge right up there now, it kind of looks weird because I have a soft edge and I have a hard line, a pencil line. So I may have to go back in there and just kind of get rid of that pencil line by just erasing it with an eraser. Here I'm going with a really light light wash, really light wash. Getting a little texture too at the same time. Dan Weimer, yeah, thanks, Paula. I've always wanted to take his class to see how he does that with the masking fluid, and he uses acrylic and he uses watercolor together. So again, mixed media, or it's like, acrylics and watercolor. It's all water based. It's all water media. So don't ever feel like it's wrong. You can use whatever you want to make it your own look. And look at what he does. I mean, he does an amazing job with his look. As soon as you see one of his paintings, you know it right away it's his. And if you don't know what these people's work look like, just type them into Google and they'll bring it right up. They're very good artists. They're very famous artists. There's tons of stuff out there for them to look at their work. So now I'm getting a little bit darker over on this side because it's my center of interest, right? And so I'm going to go in here and texture this up a little bit too. I'm going to go in here and just texture this up. And I'm at my detail stage now. So it's okay to get hard edges and just make this area a little bit more interesting. I'm so happy you guys know all these artists. Sometimes I forget the names, but see how already just by explaining his work, I can just say something about him and then you know right away. So this is hard edged, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing really contrasty. I'm just making it a little bit darker, getting my hard edges in here, getting my texture. I want texture in here. I'm going to keep this foggy. I'm going to leave that alone so that it looks like it's supposed to be, again, it's supposed to look like mist. Maybe I'll even do this, like make trees back here, even though I don't see trees back here. But that doesn't mean I can't do this and make it look like there's some trees in front of this mist. As long as it's not super contrasty, it's just going to look like texture pretty much. And since I have this little mishap here when it was wet, it's now dry, and so I'm going to up my mountain a little bit, and I'm going to make it darker only because I can't do it any other way. So I'm just going to make this darker. Make it darker, hard edged. Bring it up a little bit, and so sometimes that's a choice you got to make. You got to change things around a little bit. And I think it looks better anyways, being a little bit darker up there. Using a little bit of violet. And I know that's a little bit lighter and darker up here, but I can do whatever you want, basically. And so I'm just going to put a little bit more texture up here. This is supposed to be white here, like you can't see the top, so I'm going to make it a little bit like that. But first let me get in here with some a little bit darker parts. Because I didn't put a mist over there. Now I could re-wet the whole sky and put like white paint over that and mist it up. But I'm just going to make that a little bit darker, and so I can go either way. I can either make it misty or I can just make this part a little bit darker, looking like the top of the mountain, and that way I don't have to erase the line. So it's all good. Give it a peek. All right, now this one right here, let's hurry up on that. Even though I still have a lot of time here. I'm gonna go with really dark, a little bit of orange. And I had a couple of people, new students recently, and I really am into how much paint you use nowadays. I mean, we really have to use a lot of paint, and fresh paint or Holbein because it stays fresh all the time. But you can't use hard paint to paint with. It has to be a lot of paint so that you can go in there and put it down and it stays, basically. You can't use a tint on everything. Unless you have a high key painting, if it's all high key, then yeah. But at a certain point, you have to use enough pigment. And actually floating your pigment is a great thing too, to make it float and get that granulation happening. So now we're just going to go in here and see I'm doing very small details of this one, because this one's important and I make it look really good. This tree right here is this area. It's kind of the center of interest. And so I really want to make these look really nice. Really a little bit more detailed. And again, like I was saying before too, is like, don't worry about how long it takes you to do something. I have some students that really feel like they don't paint fast enough. And it's like, that's not a thing. You don't have to worry about how long it takes you to paint something. Some people are slower, some people are faster. That just comes with the amount of work that you do. If you're trying to figure things out, it's better to go slow, actually. You know, go slow and just kind of think it through. You don't have to go fast. Fast is not a thing. I can still make I can make a painting look very loose without going fast. I can just, it's the way you put the brushstroke down is what it is. It's not about how fast you put the brushstroke down. Though, if you want to do a really loose painting that's very, very loose and you feel like that's a way of doing it, try it. You know, but don't worry about the speed of your painting. I've always said that too, all my classes, because I've had a bunch of students that have been really very slow, and they always kind of seem like they're not getting it, or they're not getting, but they are getting it. It's just that it takes them slower. And don't let it get you down. Like, oh my God, that guy's going so fast, and I can't keep up with him. Like he can't keep up with me during this doing the painting while I'm doing the painting. You know, it's a whole different thing. I do it because I have to do it in an hour, so I work pretty fast, and I learned that from the 35 years I was in advertising. When the storyboard had to be done at a certain time, it had to be done by then. So you did whatever you can to do it quickly, and you work for the big areas. Just get the big areas done. And then just the amount of paints that I had done, paintings and boards, it's just, you get faster because of how much you do. That's just practice. That's just. But I notice that, like, when I'm working plein air painting, I've been slowing down a lot because I want to have my things look a little bit tighter. I'm trying to manipulate them a little bit slower so they look like something that's not just, you know, thrown together really quickly. I wonder if I should make the whole corner dark. Yeah, let's just make this whole corner dark. I'm gonna put some trees in here that are blue, because I don't think we have that in there. I'm gonna make this a little bit darker bluish up here. Make this a little bit darker, a little more texture. A little more texture up here. So I want this to dull down here, so I'm going to put a little water there to soften that. You know, I almost had this too light, but that's okay. You know, it's fine. Look at all this work in here. There's a lot of stuff in here. Yes, I can erase pencil lines through the watercolor because it's transparent watercolor. So you can. Sometimes you affect the watercolor a little bit, but you can erase the pencil lines. Not if you're tracing that stuff, like the graphite paper. A lot of times you can't do that when you do that. But if you're just doing regular pencil and it's soft, you can pretty much erase a lot of that stuff. Dan Weimer, Pat says that Dan Weimer will be at the Villages Arts Center in Florida, February 3rd, 4th, and 5th. There are openings. Come on down. So go down to the Villages in February. I'll be there in January. And so I'm always at the same places that Dan has been going. And one of these days, maybe I can run into him and actually take his workshop myself. I would love to do that. All right, my last thing I'm going to do is right in here. I'm going to go in there and do some trees that are in the background kind of thing, with like a darker bluish, a bluish green. I don't want to make it too dark. I just want to make it stand out. I have a little bit of purple in there too. Just want to make it stand out a little bit, like it's these trees, like this kind of stuff. But just so there's some interest right here, like there's still some trees here. and then when it's over here, it'll blur a little bit. And I know it's not like that totally on the thing, but I can't really see what's in there anyway, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to make this area look a little bit more interesting. So some trees through here. It just gives it another path to kind of go up this way, I'm thinking. This tree is going to have to be a little bit darker than though. And I'm kind of blurring this area right here so it looks like it's still part of the fog. Maybe a little bit of here too. I might put a little bit of these trees farther back here. Give it a little bit of like it's in the fog. So I can do it really light, like it's inside the fog, and like there's trees all around here. As long as you don't put a lot of contrast, it'll look like fog still rolling through there. And then this part, I noticed there's a lot of texture right here, so I'm going to take a light greenish blue and then just put a little texture into the light area here, because there's a lot of rocks and a lot of stuff happening. There's a little bit of snow in there still, and so you're getting a lot of texture. If you do paint these, please post them. I would love to see them. I know that some people don't post them, but they're doing it. I would love to see it, and I think a lot of your friends here online, they'd love to see it too. We like seeing what everybody does, and it helps to see what other people do with the same subject matter. That's the great thing about a class, like when you're in a class, and so it could be like a class here too. You could just do it and post it on my BeckerArt group page, BeckerArt group, and post it. And ask questions too, because there's somebody else that may want to answer or have that answered, but is too scared to ask it or just didn't think about it at a certain time. So ask away and post away too. It doesn't cost you anything. It can only help you. We're here to help. I think we're pretty close here, guys. I know it's a lot earlier, but oh, actually, no, it's not. All right, I think that's about it. So ask me any questions, last questions. It's a pretty simple, just simple kind of subject matter. Nothing, no big deal, nothing super exciting, but it's kind of fun to try something like this once in a while where you don't have a million things to worry about, and here it's just, you don't have to be right on with the drawing. A little bit darker right here. And I'll put a little bit darker here too. A little bit darker right here. I thought it'd be kind of nice to have a little bit of texture here. Not too dark. I don't want to get it too dark. All right, there it is. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for stopping by. And if you ever have questions after I get this done and stuff, that you can still ask the questions. Just go into this right into the video and ask it there too. After the thing is gone, you can still ask it in the body of the video. Gray on gray, it's called. It's a Holbein paint. It's called gray on gray, and it's just a gray color. It's white with black probably, and it's kind of this one right here. See, it's a little bit blue, kind of bluish. But I don't know what they mix in. I have never looked at the tube, but it's called gray on gray, and it's with Holbein. Super painting. Don't forget to tap the like button. Thank you, Maria. Thanks everybody, and if I see anybody at the gallery on Saturday in Lake Zurich, I hope to see you there if you're in the area. I'm thinking of maybe going there. I'm not quite sure if I can go, but hopefully I will go. And so here's this one, and here's this afternoon one. See the difference between the values? See how important the values are? Colors, they can be whatever you want the colors to be, but the value here has to be darker. It just feels, and also this one's a little bit more worked on, a little bit tighter. This one is a little bit looser. And again, look at how dark, how light that is. And I think the darkness really helps it to come forward a little bit and make it more like the value pattern that I started with. All right. Thanks, guys. Everybody have a great rest of the week. And hopefully I'll see you on Sunday morning. And I'm not sure what I'm painting then. So until then, we'll see you on Sunday. Bye-bye.